Hey there, thanks for checking out this YouTube video. If you're not familiar with Cape Cod Church, you can check us out online at capecodchurch.com to learn more. In the meantime, we hope that you enjoyed this video from our current series, Rebuilders.
We are now 3 weeks into this series on rebuilding. We're walking our way through Nehemiah, and I thought maybe the way we should kind of engage with this is get to the good stuff, right? We've been talking about how the story started and how they went about building the wall, and I thought we might go to kind of the victory lap right now since Father's Day, a little bit of celebration. Here's what it says in Nehemiah chapter 6 and verses 15 and 16. It says, "So on October 2nd, the wall was finished." Now, if you read October 2nd, that's kind of jarring. You're like, wait, was there an October in the Old Testament? Technically, that's translated for your English benefit. It was the 25th day of the month of Elul, which translates to October 2nd, 445 BC. Give or take, I don't know, a decade or two, something like that. So on October 2nd, the wall was finished just 52 days after we had begun. So, I mean, there's really this remarkable story that just 52 days after the beginning of this work, the wall is finished. And then it says in verse 16, it says, "When the enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. And they realized this work had been done with the help of our God." Man, don't you love a victory lap, right? Don't you love just a good ending when, man, just the whole story comes together and you get to celebrate and you go, there, see that? And everything turns out perfect. It's like it was written by Disney or something. Everything's good. And anybody else read that and think, man, life is just never that easy. It's like, it just feels like it's never 52 days and whatcha, look at that, awesome. Everything worked out perfectly. And in fact, because we've been walking through it for a few weeks now, you know that's not the whole story. In fact, that's not even the whole story of this chapter. See, I think what would be good for us to wrestle with is the victory and the conflict that had to be walked through to get to the victory. I specifically want to talk about criticism and how it seems like every rebuilding effort you go through will have to endure a season of conflict and criticism. And I don't know if you've noticed, we've been through a heck of a year of conflict. I mean, if it wasn't bad enough we had a pandemic, I mean, you would kind of hope that like pandemics would have this unifying effect. 20 years ago this year, 9/11 happened, remember? Remember that moment of just national unity where, man, everybody came together and, I mean, I know it didn't last forever, but at least it came, and it seemed like we had a pandemic, and as soon as it hit, conflict. Where did it come from? Who's at fault? Social distancing. People closing down beaches. Blocking my favorite parking spot at the beach for months on end. Still bitter. Social media. Masks. Remember those? Man, conflict, tension. And if that weren't enough, we had some of the most intense conversations around race that we've seen in decades. And then, to top it all off, like the cherry, we had an election. I mean, we've just been given every opportunity. And And maybe none of those things felt particularly like the criticism or conflict that you engaged in. But what happened is it was like we were fomenting a culture of conflict and criticism, and it just seemed to creep out everywhere. So here's what I'm saying is we're in this rebuilding efforts, and we're rebuilding with a target on our back. It's never been harder. So when you read the story of Nehemiah, you discover that all of this work that Nehemiah is doing, he's doing with a target on his back. And so I wanted to stay just in this chapter, but I wanted to roll back to the beginning because there are two ways that you get to see how criticism and conflict have a tendency to keep us from the rebuilding process, rebuilding relationships, rebuilding careers, rebuilding lives, rebuilding church communities. Let me show it to you. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 1, Sanballat, there's the troublemaker again, Tobiah, his buddy, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall. So this is a little bit of a precursor. We're reading back, but he's telling you how this celebration all came about. And it says that we had finished rebuilding the wall, that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gates. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message to me, asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. Nothing good happens in Ono. Listen, you don't even have to be a Bible scholar. You could have opened this book for the very first time and go, oh, no, that's like whoever wrote that knew what they were doing, right? But I realized, because I'm a genius, they were plotting to harm me. So I replied by sending this message to them. I am engaged in a great work. I've always loved that line. I am doing a great work, and I cannot come to meet with you. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? 4 times they sent the same message, and each time I gave the same reply. You see, criticism is an invitation to fight on their turf. Come over here, leave what you're doing there to fight with me here. Engage with me in conflict here. And Nehemiah's response is simple and perfect. I can't do that. I'm doing this. I can't meet you there. I'm doing this. I don't have time to travel. The plain of Ono is like 20 miles north. It's kind of between Jerusalem and Samaria, and it's about 20 miles. It would have taken a couple of days. Or, given the nature of the meeting, forever. Like you're never coming back. And Nehemiah says, I don't think so. And his answer is straightforward. I'm doing this. I can't do that. I'm doing this. I can't do that. I'm doing this. I can't do that. You see, the cost of conflict is often the loss of focus. We leave the thing we're called to engage in this fight. And we lose our calling. Have you ever found that? Have you ever found you got so wrapped up in the conflict that you lost the relationship, you lost the marriage, you lost the parent, you lost the kid, you lost the relationship with the friend because you were just so caught up in the conflict that we lost the thing, that we couldn't get about the work that we were called to do. You may have read about a year ago, this story made the rounds. Dagmar Turner, who was a professional violinist, was playing in the symphony when she experienced for the first time in her life a seizure. She had never had seizures in her life, and in the middle of a symphony, she had these seizures that prevented her from playing, and she went off to the doctor, the neurologist, and they discovered that she had a tumor growing in her brain, near her frontal lobe, and unfortunately it was close to that place that controlled fine motor function that enabled her to play the violin. And they told her, they said, we've got to perform surgery. The only way you'll survive is if we surgically remove this tumor. And of course, this created in her all kinds of tension, and I'm going to lose my ability to play the violin. And so they came up with a plan, and the plan was that she would go through the surgery awake. You may have seen this. It's not brand new, but in this case, they said, we don't know exactly where in the brain that place that enables you to play is, so we'd like you to play while we perform surgery on your brain. There's a YouTube video, folks. I'm not making this up. If it's on YouTube, it must be true. It's in the BBC and other, reliable news sources, things like that. There's video of her playing while the doctors are performing surgery. I love that picture, like the focus on the calling, because listen, here's what happens in our life. Sometimes conflict and criticism is like a cancer, and in our effort to remove it, we lose our calling, the thing that we were meant to do, the thing that we were passionate about, the thing that was the most important thing in our life gets lost. And all I'm saying is, like, in the middle of this conflict, in the middle of the tension that seems to be ripping us apart, don't lose your calling. Don't miss the thing that you were made for. Don't miss what God is doing in your life because you lost your focus and you got so wrapped up in winning the fight. And some of you are thinking, you don't understand what they said about me. I mean, Ben, this wasn't like some private invitation to go up and hang out in the plain of Ono. It's personal. You know what I'm talking about? When words are said, and they're not said in secret, they're said out loud, and conflict is everywhere. So the story is not quite over here, because in verse 5 it says the fifth time. So Sanballat's not done. The fifth time, Sanballat's servant came with an open letter. An open letter was a public declaration. It was public shaming. If it was today, he would have published it on Facebook, right? He would have taken out an ad in the newspaper. He came with an open letter in his hand, and this is what it said. So this time, he doesn't go to Nehemiah. He goes to the crowd. He goes to Nehemiah's people, and he reads it aloud. And watch what he says. He doesn't just invite him to a conversation. Now he's accusing him, and he's accusing him of motive. He said, there is a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem tells me it's true, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and that is why you're rebuilding the wall. According to the reports, you plan to be their king. You're setting yourself up. All of this talk about getting along and rebuilding for the glory of God and how you're aligned with King Artaxerxes, that's all a facade. It's a fabrication. You're planning to be a king. You're a threat to King Artaxerxes, the most powerful leader in the world. He's threatening his life. He's spreading a rumor that would bring Nehemiah down. And he's not done. Verse 7 says, he also reports that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you. Look, there is a king in Judah. The the people had been waiting for a Messiah that the prophets would prophesy, and now here comes Sanballat with his open letter, and he says, you've even hired people to lie and say that you're like a Messiah figure. You think you're the Messiah. You're making yourself up to be a king, and you're going down. Next thing, you can be very sure that this report will get back to the king. So I suggest you come to the plain of Ono and talk it over with me. You ever had someone question your character, your motivation? Do you ever have someone make an unfair, untrue accusation? You see, here's the problem with what he's saying. It sounds plausible. I mean, it's not like it couldn't have been true. It could have been true. I mean, he is rebuilding the wall. If you read the whole text, he was making rules and telling people what they could and couldn't do, and he might have sounded like a king. It sounded plausible, printable. You ever have somebody say something about you that was plausible, printable, and not true? How's that feel? Man, everything in you wants to defend yourself. We've been, we're in the middle of doing some work here at the church behind the scenes. We're doing some work on a website and working with some companies, and so we sent out an RFP, and we've been interviewing companies. And of course, it's all by Zoom. You come on, and they want to show you that they've done their homework, so that they've looked through your website, that they understand a little bit of who you are, which you appreciate. You know, it's always bad when they get on. Who are we talking to? So they get on, and they're like, oh, we're doing this. We notice you've done this, and we saw that you do this, and oh man, that's great. Well, the other day we were on with one of them. It was Brittany and myself and Mark. We were on this kind of interview, and they were going to town showing us how aware they were. In fact, they said, we went on social media and we've been researching you on social media. We've even been reading your reviews, and they're pretty good. Except one of them, Pastor Ben, said this about you. I'm like, oh, no, you said, why are you saying, no, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Let me tell you the other side of the story. And I found myself on a Zoom call. Some of you are like, I got to go find out what he said. Don't look it up. If you go look it up, you're part of the problem. I'm telling you it's not true. It wasn't horrible. See that? I'm defending myself. I'm afraid you'll think something bad about me. I'm on the Zoom call with strangers, and I'm like defending myself. Like, no. Let me tell you the other side of the story. And they're like, no, it's okay. We believe you. I'm like, you see, when someone says something like that, we get wrapped up in a fight for fair. Oh, no, that's not fair. That's not true. That's not the whole story. And we lose our focus, we lose our conversation, we lose our calling because we're so wrapped up in the fight for what's fair. But Nehemiah, this guy is a giant, and his response is brilliant. And in his 2-sentence response, he gives us, I think, a very short outline on how to respond when unfair accusations have come your way. Let me read to you his response. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 8. I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. That was complicated, wasn't it? I think in the Hebrew it says, you are a liar. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are just making it up out of your head. End quote. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking, their hands will get too weak for the work, and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. It was a simple response to what is unfair and untrue. And in it, I think it gives us 3 very quick principles. You might want to write these down because this happens more often than we'd like to admit. First, say as little as necessary. That's just good practice. This and don't. Say as little as necessary. The difference between declaring the truth and defending yourself often comes down to nothing more than the number of words. And confident people know the difference, and they know the value of less. Here's the second thing he does. He relies on his past character and his present work. Just like you've seen what I've done, and you see what I'm doing. And so he's just content. Instead of letting people judge a ongoing public debate, he's content to let them judge his past character and the work he's doing. You see, people are going to judge. They're going to make a decision. Let them make it on your character and on the work you are doing. There's a third thing he does here, and it's so important. You can see it kind of walking through the theme of the latter part of the verse, and that is that he decided to value a private conversation with God over public criticism from another. The adversary public pronouncement didn't matter as much as what God was saying in private. That all through this book, there's this recurring theme where he goes to prayer. He goes to prayer. He goes to prayer. And there is this repeating sense that what God was saying in moments of private prayer just mattered more than what anyone could say out there. Listen, here's the deal. Someone's going to say something unfair and untrue about you. And someone's going to believe it. I wish that weren't true. Someone's going to say something's unfair, and someone's going to come along, and they're going to believe it. All I'm saying is don't let that someone be you. Don't fall into the trap of believing the criticism so much that you buy into defending, because in that moment, you've given it more credibility than it deserved. You see, down deep, you know what we all want? We want somebody who'll defend us, don't we? We want somebody in the moment that the unfair and the unkind is said. We just want somebody to stand up and go, that's not true. That's not right. I know the whole story. I know the rest of the story. I know the man. I know the woman. And what you're saying isn't true. Deep down, that's what we want. And listen, sometimes there's no one else and nowhere else to turn but to know that what God has said in private and what God knows about you matters more than what someone else says about you. And sometimes the only one you've got to turn to is Him. And listen, I just want to finish by saying this. Listen, the cry of our hearts is that someone would fight for us, and that's exactly what God did. When God sent His Son, Jesus Christ, into this world, He came into this world literally to fight for us. When you see Jesus Christ going to the cross. He goes to the cross with all of the accusations of the one the Bible calls the accuser, Satan himself, and he fights for us. And what you see happening on the gruesomeness of the cross is you see the battle of the ages being played out for you. You see Jesus Christ fighting for you so that you and I could come to this moment in this life and choose Him. You see, maybe you've just been wrestling with, what do I do with Jesus? And what do I do with this church thing and this Christianity thing? And you've been reading the stories and singing the songs and watching from afar, but you haven't taken that step where you embrace Jesus Christ as your own. Listen, I'm telling you, listen, when everybody else leaves you, when everybody else walks away, He's the one who came and went to the cross for you. He's the one that is always relevant. And if you feel like in your life, man, there is no one I can count on, I promise you it's not true, because 2,000 years ago on a cross, He proved it once and for all, so that you and I could accept Him. I love what it says in Revelations, behold, I stand at the door and knock. I just love that picture. Knock. Knock. Maybe that's what you hear. Maybe you hear Him like God is calling and He's knocking at the door of your heart, and maybe this Father's Day is your moment to say yes to Him. If that's you, I'd like to give you a chance to do it. Would you bow with me with our heads bowed and our eyes closed? In the quiet of the moment, some of us may need to take this moment and just step back from this prayer and just get alone with God and just be reminded that what He says in private matters more than what anybody else has said in public. What He knows of me matters most. Don't lose your calling, getting caught up in the cancer of fighting. But maybe this moment is for you because you're at that crossroads where God is knocking at the door of your heart. Jesus Christ is asking to come in. He wants to be at the center of your life. For you to place your faith, your trust in Him and Him alone. And maybe this is your moment. And if so, wherever you're seated in the room or watching online, I just want to give you the chance in the quiet of the moment to say yes to Him, to invite Him into your life, to accept His gift of forgiveness once and for all. If that's you, I invite you just to pray with me right where you're at. From your heart, God hears it. Something like this: dear God, you know me. You know everything about me. And you love me. Jesus Christ, I accept your gift of forgiveness. Today, I invite you into my life to dwell in me forever. I want to live my life fully for you. Jesus Christ, thank you for the gift of your salvation. In Jesus' name, amen.
We hope that you enjoyed this video from our Rebuilders series. If this is your first time watching with us, we would love to get to know you better. Let us know you're here by filling out the Connect card with the link in the caption. You can also use that card to let us know if you have a prayer request or if you made a faith decision today. And if you enjoyed today's message and you thought of a friend who could really use some encouragement from it, YouTube is one of the best ways to share content. You can easily share this message via text, email, or on social media. And one more thing, since you stayed all the way to the end, we hope that you'll consider liking this video so that other people can discover it too. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for joining us today, and I'll see you again soon.